Angela Glover stood in the arched doorway of the Clayton Mansion's kitchen, watching two 9-year-old boys transform a $40,000 culinary showroom into a battlefield. Red tomato pulp dripped down imported Italian tiles, white flour coated the brass fixtures like radioactive fallout, and a pot of boiling water hissed forgotten on the Viking range. But what shocked her most wasn't the destruction. It was the French chef sprinting past her, muttering prayers in his native tongue, his toque abandoned on the floor like a surrender flag. "Good luck, lady," Timothy Clayton sneered from behind the marble island, hurling a fistful of peppercorns that scattered like shrapnel. "Dad pays triple, but nobody lasts a week. We've buried 15 nannies, and you're about to be number 16. His twin, Victor, stood beside him with arms crossed, two blonde sentinels guarding a kingdom of pain. Their designer clothes were streaked with sauce, their eyes sharp with practiced cruelty. They had perfected the art of making adults quit. But as Angela surveyed the wreckage, the overturned copper pots, the shattered eggs, the chaos that screamed, "We are not okay," she didn't see monsters. She saw two boys drowning in grief, using that anger as a life raft in a house too big and too silent. "I know you're angry," Angela said softly, her Jamaican accent turning each word into a gentle wave. She stepped over a puddle of olive oil without flinching. "And I know you think if you make this kitchen hell, I'll run like the others did." The boys froze, startled. No nanny had ever walked toward the mess before. Timothy's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about us." Angela knelt down, meeting their eyes at level ground. "You're right, I don't know everything yet, but I know you're scared. I know you're testing me, and I know that by the end of today, I'm going to teach you something that will change everything." Victor's defiance flickered. "What?" Angela stood, brushing flour from her floral apron, and moved to the stove with quiet authority, turning off burners, opening windows, letting light and air reclaim the room. "I'm going to teach you that love doesn't leave when things get messy, and that your souls need seasoning just as much as any meal I'll cook." Just then, the sharp echo of Italian leather dress shoes struck the marble hallway. The twins' faces went pale. "He's coming," Victor whispered. "Dad's going to fire you before you even start." But what happened next would shock everyone in that mansion, including a Clayton, the billionaire who had spent 6 months believing his sons were beyond saving. 6 months earlier, Carl Clayton had buried his marriage in a courthouse, not a cemetery. He sat alone in his corner office on the 52nd floor of Clayton Media Tower, staring at divorce papers that had cost more than most people's homes. Vanessa's signature was a slash of black ink, cold, final, unforgiving. She'd left him for another mogul, another empire, another man who didn't work 18-hour days. She'd also left their sons. Carl's phone buzzed. His assistant's name flashed across the screen. He knew what was coming. He always knew. "Mr. Clayton," Rebecca's voice was tight with exhaustion. Someone Augustine Prep called. Timothy and Victor started a food fight in the cafeteria, locked the music teacher in the instrument closet, and refused to leave the playground when dismissal bell rang. Carl closed his eyes. And Nanny Martinez just quit. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Those boys need a therapist, not a babysitter, and I need a vacation from hell." That made 15. 15 nannies in 6 months. 15 women who'd walked into the Clayton mansion with credentials and confidence, only to flee in tears within weeks. Some lasted days. One lasted 3 hours. Carl had tried everything. Bonuses, behavioral therapists, elite private schools with trauma-informed pedagogy. Nothing worked. His sons had become legends in Los Angeles' domestic staffing circles. The ungovernable Claytons, the boys no amount of money could tame. "Rebecca, post another ad, double the salary, offer housing if necessary." "Sir, with respect, the agency blacklisted us." "Word's out, no one in LA will work for the Claytons." Carl stared at the skyline, at the city he'd conquered with ambition and ruthlessness, and felt utterly powerless. He'd built a $3 billion empire by age 35, controlled studios that shaped global culture, commanded rooms full of executives with a single glance. But he couldn't reach his own children. The truth Carl wouldn't admit, he was terrified of his sons, terrified of their anger, terrified that when they looked at him, they saw the man who'd chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories, who'd let their mother slip away while chasing his next deal. Post it nationally, Carl said quietly. Someone, somewhere, must be desperate enough. He had no idea that desperation would arrive wearing a floral apron and carrying the smell of time. 3,000 miles away, Angela Glover sat in a cramped Brooklyn studio, scrolling through job listings while rain drummed against cracked windows. 2 months unemployed. Savings nearly gone. Rent overdue. She'd been a private chef and nanny for 8 years, moving between wealthy families who wanted someone to feed their children organic meals and teach them table manners. The work was fine, stable, respectful, occasionally rewarding. But when her last family relocated to Singapore without offering to bring her along, Angela found herself adrift in a city that suddenly felt foreign. Then she saw it. Private culinary nanny needed for twin boys, age 9, Los Angeles, competitive salary, immediate start. Challenging environment and experienced candidates only. Angela almost scrolled past. Challenging environment was rich people code for our kids are nightmares and we're desperate. But something made her pause. She Googled the Clayton family Los Angeles and found the story that changed everything. 6 months ago, Vanessa Clayton, socialite and philanthropist, had divorced billionaire Carl Clayton in a scandal that dominated tabloids for weeks. She'd left him and their 9-year-old twin sons for another businessman. The boys, Timothy and Victor, had become infamous for their behavior. Schools threatened expulsion. Nannies fled. The press called them Hollywood's most troubled children. Angela stared at a photo of the twins at their mother's final charity gala, standing stiff in tailored suits, eyes empty. She knew that look. She'd worn it herself. At 7 years old, Angela had lost both parents in a Kingston house fire. She'd spent the next decade in foster care, passed between homes that saw her as a paycheck, not a person. She learned early that children who acted out weren't bad. They were broken, and breaking was the only language they had left to speak. Angela clicked apply and began typing. Mr. Clayton, I'm not applying because I think your sons need discipline. I'm applying because I think they need someone who understands that grief looks like anger, and that the hardest children to love are the ones who need it most. I can start Monday. She hit send before doubt could stop her. 3 days later, her phone rang. A clipped voice. Ms. Glover, Mr. Clayton would like you in Los Angeles by Sunday. We'll arrange your flight. Angela packed a single suitcase, clothes, a worn recipe journal that had belonged to her mother, and a wooden spoon carved from Jamaican mahogany. She'd learned long ago that you couldn't heal a house with rules. You healed it with presence, with patience, with the smell of time and the sound of someone who stayed. As the plane descended over Los Angeles, Angela whispered a prayer her foster mother used to say, Lord, let me be the steady hand for those who shake. She had no idea she was about to walk into a kitchen on fire, or that she'd be the one to turn that fire into warmth. The kitchen felt different after Carl left. Angela stood alone in the silence, surveying the wreckage the twins had left behind. Flour still dusted the counters like fresh snow, tomato pulp clung to grout lines, and the copper pots lay scattered like fallen soldiers. But she didn't see a mess. She saw an opportunity, a canvas waiting to be transformed. She tied her floral apron tighter and moved to the pantry, pulling ingredients with the ease of someone who'd cooked through crisis before. Bone-in chicken thighs, fresh thyme bundled with green string, fat cloves of garlic, scallions with roots still attached, a wrinkled Scotch bonnet pepper. Her hands moved on instinct, gathering pimento berries, a bottle of browning sauce, carrots that still smelled like earth. When people cook together, she murmured to the empty room, they remember who they are. The twins appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later, summoned not by words, but by the smell of onions sizzling in oil and the low hum of a Bob Marley song Angela couldn't help singing. Timothy and Victor stood shoulder to shoulder, suspicious and curious in equal measure. Come, Angela said without turning around. Victor, wash that callaloo in the sink. Timothy, you're crushing garlic, 6 cloves. We don't, Timothy started. 6 cloves, Angela repeated, placing a wooden cutting board and a flat knife in front of him. Peel first, then press with the side of the blade. For reasons neither boy could explain, they obeyed. As Angela browned the chicken in caramelized sugar, watching it darken to mahogany, listening to it hiss and crackle, a memory bloomed unbidden. Kingston 2019. Her tiny restaurant, Mama's Pot, where the walls were painted sunshine yellow and the menu changed based on what the market offered that morning. She'd fed street children there, teaching them to julienne carrots and knead dough, turning sharp-edged kids into soft-handed bakers. Then Hurricane Iris came, tin roof peeled back like a sardine can, water waist high, and Marcus, her husband, her partner, and every pot stirred, swept away in the flood trying to save their industrial mixer. The immigration papers had arrived 3 months later, smelling like seawater and ink, like endings and beginnings folded into the same envelope. Miss Angela? Victor's small voice pulled her back. Is the water hot enough? She blinked, steadied her hands. Perfect, baby. Now add the callaloo just like that. As the stew simmered, Angela noticed their tells. Timothy's jaw locked every time she mentioned stirring, with care your mama would be proud of. His shoulders went rigid, his eyes flicked away. Victor kept glancing at the kitchen door as if measuring the distance to an exit, calculating how fast he could run if she turned cruel. Angela set down her spoon and faced them. 3 rules in this kitchen, she said quietly. No shouting, no lying, no leaving without saying goodbye. The boys stared. That last one goes for me too, she added. I don't leave without telling you first. Deal? Timothy's defiance flickered. Victor nodded, almost imperceptibly. An hour later, 3 bowls sat steaming on the island. Angela ladled stew over white rice, then sat between the twins. She took a bite, closed her eyes, and spoke. Taste the thyme? That's patience. It doesn't rush. It just makes everything better when it's ready. She pointed to a sliver of Scotch bonnet floating in Victor's bowl. That little pepper? That's bravery. Small, but it changes everything. Timothy lifted his spoon, hesitated, then tasted. His eyes widened. Victor followed, chewed slowly, swallowed, reached for a second bite. Angela said nothing, just ate alongside them, letting the silence fill with something other than anger. From the hallway, Carl Clayton stood frozen, briefcase still in hand, watching his sons finish a meal for the first time in 6 months. They weren't fighting. They weren't throwing food. They were eating together at the same table without a single word of war. He didn't know whether to thank her or apologize for ever doubting that this kind of peace was still possible in his house. Carl stood in his home office long after midnight, tie loosened, whiskey untouched on the desk. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered like a circuit board. 10 million lives connected by invisible wires of ambition and need. He'd built an empire by understanding what people wanted before they knew it themselves, by pitching billion-dollar franchises in 10-minute meetings, by controlling narratives with surgical precision. But he couldn't ask his sons how their day went. The twins' bedroom doors were closed down the hallway, 2 panels of imported oak that might as well be fortress walls. Behind them, Timothy and Victor slept in beds he'd commissioned from Italy, surrounded by toys they ignored and photos of a family that no longer existed. Carl ran his hand over his face, feeling the weight of every failure he couldn't buy his way out of. A soft knock broke the silence. Angela stood in the doorway, still wearing her floral apron, a dish towel folded over her arm. Mr. Clayton, I was turning off the kitchen lights. Saw yours still on. He gestured for her to enter, then the words tumbled out before he could stop them. Low, unpracticed, stripped of the polish he used in boardrooms. They look at me and see a stranger. Angela crossed the room and stood beside him at the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. She didn't rush to fill the silence with platitudes. Then show them the man, she said finally, not the mogul. Carl let out a bitter laugh. I don't know if there's a difference anymore. There is, Angela turned to face him, but you have to prove it. 1 uninterrupted meal this week. Phones away, no calls, no emails, no excuses. Just you and your boys. I have a board meeting, then move it. Her voice was gentle but unyielding. Mr. Clayton, your sons are testing whether you'll choose them. And right now, you keep failing that test. The words landed like a punch. Carl remembered Vanessa leaving. Not the dramatic parts the tabloids loved, but the quiet brutality of it. Legal documents stacked on the dining table, language as cold as stainless steel, irreconcilable differences, asset division, custody arrangement. She'd signed in blue ink, packed in 3 hours, and left with a man whose empire was bigger, but whose ambition matched hers perfectly. The boy's last birthday flashed through his mind, 9 years old, catered by some celebrity chef whose name he couldn't remember. 30 guests from their elite private school. Timothy and Victor sat at opposite ends of the table, silent as pallbearers, while adults made small talk over $200 cakes neither boy touched. Carl had given a speech, cut ribbons, posed for photos. He'd never asked what they wished for when they blew out the candles. One meal, Angela repeated. Start there. Carl walked to the balcony overlooking the kitchen, and even in the darkness he noticed changes. Spice jars lined the windowsill, labeled in the twins' careful handwriting. Thyme, pimento, courage pepper. A speaker sat on the counter, still displaying a playlist titled Kitchen Crew Jams, reggae replacing the angry cartoons that had been the house's soundtrack for months. Small miracles he had been too busy to see. What if they don't want me there? His voice cracked on the last word. Then you show up anyway, Angela said. So love isn't about being wanted right away, Mr. Clayton. It's about being present even when it's hard. Carl pulled out his phone, the device that owned more of his attention than his own children, and opened his calendar. Friday at 6 p.m. glowed with back-to-back conference calls. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he blocked it out. Family hour. Do not reschedule. For the first time in years, Carl Clayton put his sons on his calendar. Not as an obligation he'd find a way around, but as the only appointment that actually mattered. Thank you, he said quietly. Angela smiled. Don't thank me yet. Show up Friday, and we'll see if you mean it. She left him alone with the city lights and the weight of a promise he wasn't sure he knew how to keep. The first photographer appeared at dawn. Angela was pulling cinnamon rolls from the oven when the doorbell rang. Not the polite single chime of a delivery, but the relentless pulse of someone demanding entry. Through the kitchen window, she saw them gathering like vultures, black SUVs with tinted windows, telephoto lenses glinting in the early light, reporters adjusting microphones. By 7 a.m., the driveway was a circus. Hollywood king hires Jamaican maid to raise heirs, screamed the headline on TMZ. The photo, captured through a gap in the fence, showed Angela teaching the twins to fold dumplings, her floral apron bright against the sterile white kitchen. The caption dripped with insinuation. Billionaire Carl Clayton outsources parenting to unqualified immigrant, while mogul closes studio deals. Angela's phone buzzed with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Most were vile. A few were kind, all were intrusive. Carl sat in the war room, his corner office converted into crisis command. 5 PR executives surrounded the conference table, laptops open, faces grave. Rebecca stood by the door, arms crossed, looking like she hadn't slept. This is a brand catastrophe. Marcus Chen, his head of communications, said flatly, the optics are toxic. Wealthy white man, Jamaican domestic worker, dead mother replaced by the help. The internet is writing the narrative for us, and it's not pretty. A board member, Patricia Holbrook, leaned forward. Optics, Carl, this isn't about who she is, it's about how it looks. Terminate her contract today, issue a statement about exploring alternative childcare arrangements, and this dies in 48 hours. Carl's jaw tightened. She's not getting fired. Then you're choosing her over your company's reputation, Patricia said coldly. Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then looked up. Carl, you need to go home, now. Angela stood in her small guest room, folding clothes into the same canvas suitcase she'd arrived with. She moved methodically, shirts, jeans, the wooden spoon wrapped in a dish towel. She'd known this moment would come. It always did when worlds collided. The door burst open. No! Timothy's scream was primal, raw, a sound carved from grief. He launched himself at Angela, wrapping his arms around her waist. You can't leave. You promised. You said no leaving without saying goodbye. Victor appeared in the doorway, silent, clutching something behind his back. When Angela gently freed herself from Timothy's grip and knelt down, Victor revealed it, the wooden spoon she'd used to teach them their first meal. He held it like a talisman, like proof that magic had once lived in their house. "You're the only one who doesn't leave," Timothy whispered, tears streaming down his face. Angela's heart shattered. She opened her mouth to explain about the photographers, the headlines, the impossible position she'd put their father in, when Carl's voice cut through from the hallway. "Angela, don't pack another thing." Carl stood framed in the doorway, still wearing his suit from the war room. But something in his posture had shifted. He looked at his sons, really looked at them, and saw what he'd been too afraid to acknowledge. They weren't broken. They were healing. And the woman kneeling between them was the reason why. He pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder. "What are you doing?" Angela asked quietly. "My job, as their father." Carl recorded a 60-second video, no script, no teleprompter, just a man standing in a hallway speaking truth. He posted it to every platform his PR team managed. "Call her a nanny if you must. Call her a maid if it makes you feel superior. But to my sons, Angela Glover is hope. She's the first person in 6 months who taught them that love doesn't leave when things get hard. Judge her accent, judge her credentials, judge whatever you want. But I invite you to judge the results. My boys are eating again, laughing again, trusting again. If that makes me a bad CEO, so be it, but it makes me a better father." He hit publish. By sunset, the kitchen was their fortress. Timothy and Victor had made a sign in bright markers, "Chef Angie's Crew," and taped it to the fridge with enough tape to survive a hurricane. They stood shoulder to shoulder with Angela, preparing plantain chips while Carl chopped onions, badly, at the island. Carl's phone exploded. The video had gone viral, 20 million views in 6 hours. The comments split like tectonic plates, half calling him brave, half calling him reckless. Celebrities chimed in, activists weaponized it. Think pieces multiplied. The Clayton household became a referendum on race, class, motherhood, and capitalism. But in the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of frying plantains and reggae humming from the speaker, none of that mattered. Angela looked at Carl across the island. "You just painted a target on all of us." "I know," he said, "but I'm done running from what's right." The stakes had never been higher, and the storm was only beginning. She arrived like winter in July. Angela was wiping down the kitchen counters when she heard the click of expensive heels on marble. The sound was precise, calculated, the kind of footsteps that announced ownership rather than arrival. Through the archway, Angela glimpsed her, Vanessa Clayton, draped in ivory silk that probably cost more than Angela's entire wardrobe, her perfume preceding her like cold air before a storm. "Where are my sons?" Vanessa's voice was smooth, practiced, a voice designed for charity galas and boardroom negotiations. Angela dried her hands on a dish towel. "In the garden, reading." "Reading?" Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched. "Timothy and Victor, you must be quite the miracle worker." The words dripped with something bitter masked as sweetness. "I'm Angela Glover, I know who you are." Vanessa's smile never reached her eyes. "The internet has been very informative. I came to spend time with my boys. I assume that won't be a problem." Angela stepped aside, gesturing toward the terrace doors. "They're your sons, ma'am." But Vanessa didn't move toward the garden. Instead, she stepped closer, her perfume suffocating in the small space between them, all jasmine and ice. "Let's not pretend we don't understand each other," Vanessa said quietly. "You're a nanny, a very good one apparently, but you don't belong in this world." Angela met her gaze without flinching. "I belong where I'm needed. Everything has a price." Vanessa reached into her designer clutch and withdrew a folded check. $100,000. Enough to start over somewhere Carl's spotlight won't burn you. All you have to do is resign quietly, today, and disappear before you cause more damage to this family. Angela looked at the check, 6 figures written in elegant script, then back at Vanessa's expectant face. "You might own the name Clayton, ma'am," Angela said softly, "but I'm the one helping your boys remember what love feels like." Vanessa's composure cracked, just for a second, before reassembling into something harder. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. Vanessa tucked the check away, her smile now ablaze. We'll see. Angela found Carl in his office an hour later, staring at contracts he wasn't reading. When she told him about Vanessa's offer, his expression shifted through shock, anger, and something else. Something that made Angela's stomach tighten with uncertainty. She tried to buy you out? Carl stood, his voice low and dangerous. I'll call my lawyer. She can't. Mr. Clayton. Angela's hand on his arm stopped him. That's not why I told you. I told you because transparency matters. But, Angela withdrew her hand, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. I need to know if your gratitude is turning into something else. Because if it is, that changes everything. Carl opened his mouth, closed it, then looked away. I don't know what it is, he admitted quietly, but I know losing you would destroy my sons. Not us, not me. My sons. Angela nodded, relieved in something else she wouldn't name. Then let's focus on that. The twins fell apart that night. Victor threw his plate across the kitchen, brown stew splattering the wall Angela had scrubbed that morning. Timothy screamed words he'd learned from angry adults. Liar. Fake. You'll leave too. Vanessa's visit had ripped open wounds barely beginning to heal. Angela didn't yell, didn't scold. She simply turned off the stove, wiped her hands, and knelt between them in the wreckage. Food on the floor, rage in the air, fear written across two small faces. 3 breaths, she said calmly, placing a hand on each boy's shoulder. Breathe with me. Timothy resisted. Victor's chest heaved. 3 beats. Angela tapped the counter 3 times. Steady, rhythmic, grounding. Feel that? That's the rhythm. Nothing breaks it. Slowly, impossibly, the twins matched her breathing. 3 truths, Angela continued. Timothy first. Say them. His voice cracked. I'm safe. Good. Next one. I'm loved. Last one, baby. Timothy's eyes filled with tears. I can wait. Victor, your turn. Victor whispered the same 3 truths like a prayer, like the only thing holding him together. Angela pulled them both close, their small bodies shaking against hers. When the storm comes, we breathe. We beat. We remember. That's how we survive. They stayed that way until their breathing synchronized, until the panic receded, until the kitchen felt safe again. The next morning, Carl's lawyer called with news that turned his blood cold. Vanessa had filed for expanded custody, citing household instability and inappropriate emotional dependence on domestic staff. She'd attached screenshots of death threats Angela received, tabloid articles questioning Carl's judgment, and expert testimony about attachment disorders in children exposed to transient caregivers. The document ended with a demand: remove Angela Glover from the home or face the loss of his sons. Carl stared at the papers, feeling the walls close in. For the first time since this began, he understood what Angela had been trying to tell him. Love wasn't just about staying, it was about fighting for the right to stay, and the war had only just begun. Friday at 6 p.m., Carl Clayton did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He turned off his phone. Not silenced, not face down, off. He placed it in the kitchen drawer next to takeout menus and broken pencils, then looked at Angela, who was laying out ingredients like a surgeon preparing for an operation. No going back now, she said with a small smile. The twins watched from the island, uncertain. They'd seen their father in a kitchen exactly twice. Once for a photo shoot, once to yell at a caterer. What are we making? Carl asked, rolling up the sleeves of his dress shirt, still wearing his work clothes, still transitioning between worlds. Plantains, Angela said, handing him a knife and 3 yellow fruits. Slice them on the diagonal, not too thin. Carl positioned the blade, pressed down, and watched the plantains slip sideways and hit the floor. The twins froze, bracing for anger. Instead, Carl laughed, a real laugh, surprised and slightly embarrassed. Well, that's a first. Timothy's eyes went wide. Victor's mouth fell open. Carl tried again. The second slice was too thick. The third caught fire in the oil, smoking and blackening within seconds. Angela swooped in with tongs, rescuing the disaster while the boys dissolved into giggles. Dad, you're terrible at this, Timothy gasped between laughs. Absolutely awful, Carl agreed, grinning despite himself. Angela studied the charred plantain, then plated it with a flourish. Caramelized second chances, she declared. The best things in life are usually a little burnt around the edges. The laughter shifted into something softer, understanding wrapped in humor. Carl set down the knife and looked at his sons, really looked at them. I need to say something, and I need you to hear me. The kitchen went quiet. I've been a terrible father. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I chose premieres over pancakes, board meetings over baseball games. I told myself I was building something for you, but the truth is, I was hiding. After your mom left, I didn't know how to be what you needed, so I just worked. And that was wrong. Timothy's jaw tightened. Victor stared at his hands. I can't get back the time I missed, Carl continued, but I can show up now, if you'll let me. Will you be here tomorrow? Victor's voice was barely a whisper, the question every abandoned child eventually asks. Carl didn't hesitate. Yes, and the day after. 2 school drop-offs a week, starting Monday. Sunday breakfasts every week, no exceptions. You can test me. You should test me. But I'm done choosing everything else over you. Timothy looked up, eyes shining. Promise? Promise. Angela stepped back, letting the moment breathe. Father and sons reaching across a chasm built from months of absence. Over the next 2 weeks, the kitchen became their classroom. Angela taught Carl knife skills, how to rock the blade, how to curl your fingers to protect them. The twins howled when he nearly sliced a dish towel instead of cilantro. They did homework at the island while Carl reviewed contracts. The boys asking questions he actually stopped to answer. They created a chore chart where completing tasks earned movie night tickets. Folding laundry was worth 1 ticket, helping with dinner earned 2, cleaning without complaining got you 3. Slowly, routines replaced chaos. Structure replaced fear. Carl started leaving the office at 5:30. His assistant nearly fainted the first time. Then the invitation arrived. The Hollywood Philanthropy Gala, the event of the season, where A-listers donated millions and photographers captured every moment. Carl's PR team called it the perfect opportunity for a fresh narrative. They wanted him to attend with a new date, someone polished and safe, someone who'd erase the tabloid stain of recent months. Carl sat in his office, staring at the embossed invitation, then picked up his phone. Rebecca, I need you to organize something. A tux fitting? Car service? A charity dinner here at the mansion. Same night as the gala. 50 guests, invitation only. Tell the press we're highlighting family values and community. Rebecca paused. Sir, that's unconventional. The menu will be prepared by Angela Glover and my sons. Caribbean-inspired, every dish. Make it clear this isn't about me, it's about them. You're serious. Completely. Carl smiled, the first genuine smile his assistant had heard in months. If Hollywood wants a narrative, let's give them one. But this time, it'll be true. When Carl told Angela and the twins that night, Timothy's response was immediate. We get to cook for famous people. Angela's response was quieter, but carried more weight. You're choosing them over the gala. I'm choosing family, Carl corrected. Turns out it's the only thing I was ever supposed to be choosing. Victor looked up from his homework, a small smile breaking across his face. Can we make courage pepper chicken? Absolutely, Carl said. And I promise not to burn it. Much, Timothy added, grinning. The sound of their laughter filled the house, no longer a mansion, but finally, slowly becoming a home. Sunlight poured through the tall windows like liquid gold, turning the Clayton kitchen into something sacred. Steam rose from 3 pots on the range, rice bubbling softly, fish sizzling in oil, vegetables releasing their perfume into air already thick with time and anticipation. Brass fixtures gleamed above the marble island where Angela stood between Timothy and Victor, each boy holding a wooden spoon, each stirring their own pot with the concentration of surgeons. Reggae hummed low from the speaker, Bob Marley singing about redemption and 3 little birds. And for the first time in this house, the music matched the mood. Angela's hands moved with practiced grace, guiding Timothy's wrist as he folded bell peppers into the Escovitch sauce, vinegar and sugar balancing heat and sweet, carrots julienned into ribbons of orange, Scotch bonnet peppers bobbing like tiny grenades of courage. Victor stirred rice and peas, watching red kidney beans dance in coconut milk, learning patience through repetition. Carl stood in the doorway, still wearing his suit from the afternoon settlement hearing with Vanessa's lawyers. He'd testified for 90 minutes about Angela's impact on his sons, not in corporate language, but in the messy truth of a father trying to learn how to be present. The judge had called for a 2-week recess to review evidence. Carl had driven home in silence, terrified he might lose everything that finally mattered. Now he watched through the archway as his sons cooked, really cooked, their small hands confident, their faces focused but not afraid. Victor looked up and saw him. The boy's voice was soft but clear. "Dad, come cook with us." Carl hesitated. One step forward would cross an invisible line, from observer to participant, from mogul to man. Angela turned, flour dusting her floral apron, and held out a wooden spoon, the same one Victor had hidden during Vanessa's visit, the one that had become their talisman. She met Carl's eyes with a smile that held no judgment, only invitation. "No cameras here, boss," she said gently. "Just family." Carl took the spoon. They moved together like a jazz quartet finding its rhythm, each player listening, adjusting, contributing to something larger than themselves. Angela showed Carl how to flip the red snapper without breaking the crispy skin. "Confidence and speed, Mr. Clayton. The fish rewards bravery." And he managed it on the third try, earning cheers from the twins. Timothy told him about the boy at school who'd stopped teasing him once. Timothy taught him to make fried dumplings in cooking class, a story that made Carl's chest tighten with pride he hadn't known he could feel. Victor whispered a memory while stirring. Mom used to sing when she cooked, before she got sad. The kitchen went quiet except for the bubbling pots. "What did she sing?" Carl asked softly, afraid to break the moment. "Beatles songs. Here Comes the Sun, mostly." Angela hummed a few bars. Victor joined her, tentative at first, then stronger. Timothy added harmony. Carl listened, aching, grateful, present. They plated the Escovitch fish on a vintage platter Angela had found in the back of the pantry, golden fried snapper glistening under a rainbow of pickled vegetables. The sauce poured over like liquid sunset. The rice came next, fluffy and fragrant. The mango slaw added brightness, lime juice and cilantro cutting through the richness. As Angela garnished with fresh thyme, Timothy spoke without looking up, his voice barely audible over the music. "It doesn't hurt as much when we're stirring." The words landed like a prayer. Carl set down his spoon, knelt between his sons, and pulled them close. Flour dusted, oil splattered, imperfect, and entirely real. "I know, buddy, I know." They ate at the island, not the formal dining room with its silence and ghosts, passing plates, tasting each other's creations, naming flavors the way Angela had taught them. The Escovitch sauce was brave and bright. The rice was patient and grounding. The mango slaw was new beginnings. When the last bite was gone, Carl did something that shocked even himself. He took off his suit jacket, draped it over a chair, rolled up his sleeves to the elbow, and started filling the sink with soapy water. "Dad?" Timothy stared. "You're doing dishes?" "We cook together, we clean together." Carl handed Victor a towel. "That's how families work, right?" Angela watched from the counter, eyes shining, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. They washed every pot, every plate, every wooden spoon. Carl scrubbed until the brass shone and his hands pruned, and the twins sang off-key reggae while drying silverware. By the time the kitchen gleamed, the sun had set, painting the room in twilight gold. The Clayton household had crossed a point of no return, not with fanfare or declarations, but with soap suds and laughter and the quiet recognition that home wasn't a place you bought. It was something you built, one meal at a time, with people who chose to stay. The mansion's ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, but the real light came from the open kitchen Angela had insisted they build. A pop-up station with glass walls where the Clayton family would cook in full view of 50 of Hollywood's most powerful players. Guests arrived expecting Michelin-starred theatrics, foams, tweezers, molecular gastronomy. Instead, they found Angela in her signature floral apron, Timothy and Victor in matching chef whites, tailored small but impossibly adorable, and Carl, sleeves rolled, tie abandoned, stirring a pot of rice and peas like he'd been doing it his whole life. Each plate came with a handwritten card. Time equals patience. Scotch bonnet equals bravery. Coconut milk equals grace under pressure. Angela plated jerk chicken with hands that had fed street children in Kingston and now fed Hollywood royalty. No difference in her care, no hierarchy in her love. Timothy arranged plantains in perfect fans, tongue between his teeth in concentration. Victor spooned mango chutney with the precision of a painter, each drizzle deliberate. The guests were silent at first, confused, perhaps skeptical. Then they tasted, and the room shifted. The live demo started at 8 p.m. Timothy stood at a cutting board, a Spanish onion the size of his fist in front of him. A sea of faces watched. Producers, directors, tech billionaires who'd flown in from San Francisco. A camera crew live-streamed to Instagram. My dad used to cry when he cut onions, Timothy said, his voice surprisingly steady for a 9-year-old addressing 50 adults. Miss Angela taught me the trick. 3 deep breaths before you start. It's not about the onion. It's about remembering you're in control. He demonstrated, breathed, cut. No tears. The audience erupted in applause. Victor stepped forward next, holding a small bowl of dark, glossy sauce. This is gratitude glaze, he said softly. It's made with molasses and rum and ginger. Miss Angela says every good meal should taste like thank you. A tech CEO in the front row wiped his eyes. A famous actress whispered to her husband. Then Vanessa appeared at the ballroom entrance. A reporter flanking her like a weapon. The hostile journalist pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. Mr. Glover, isn't this exploitation? These children cooking for their father's business associates? Isn't this just another form of child labor dressed up as heartwarming content? The room went cold. Carl moved to intercept, but Angela placed a gentle hand on his arm. She faced the reporter with the same calm she'd brought to the first day's chaos, her Jamaican accent warm and unhurried. This isn't exploitation, sir. This is restoration. Angela gestured to the twins who stood beside her, unafraid. 6 months ago, these boys were drowning in grief. Today, they're teaching grown adults how to breathe through pain. That's not labor, that's healing made visible. Carl stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. My sons found their voices in this kitchen, not in a boardroom, not in a therapist's office, not in any space my money could buy. They found them because someone cared enough to teach them that love doesn't leave when things get messy. The applause started small, one person, then another, then swelled into something thunderous. Guests rose to their feet. The live stream exploded with hearts and crying emojis. Vanessa's face went white. The reporter retreated. By 11 p.m., the headlines were already changing. The billionaire who found family and flavor led entertainment tonight. Clayton charity dinner raises $4.2 million, triple expected donations, ran on Bloomberg. Instagram flooded with photos of the twins, their small hands creating something beautiful, while the world watched. The judge presiding over Vanessa's custody case reportedly attended as a guest, anonymously at the back, and was seen taking notes throughout the evening. Vanessa's lawyer called Carl at midnight. She's withdrawing the expanded custody motion. Your video testimony combined with tonight, there's no case anymore. After the last guest departed, after the catering staff cleaned up, after the adrenaline faded into exhaustion, Angela found herself on the kitchen floor with the twins. Timothy's head rested on her left shoulder, Victor's on her right. Both boys had changed into pajamas but refused to go upstairs. They'd fought for this moment, earned it through flour and tears and courage, measured in wooden spoons. Carl stood in the doorway, still wearing his dress shirt, now stained with turmeric and coconut milk, and captured the image on his phone, not for the press, but for himself. His sons, fast asleep against the woman who'd saved them. The woman who'd reminded him that fortune meant nothing without the people you chose to share it with. Angela looked up and met his eyes. She mouthed three words. They're going to be okay. Carl nodded, throat tight with gratitude too big for language. The family image was seared into public memory, not manufactured by publicists, but earned through presence, patience, and the revolutionary act of showing up when it mattered most. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the Clayton mansion finally felt like home. Dawn arrived softly, painting the kitchen in shades of rose and gold. Carl stood at the sink, washing the last champagne flutes from the night before while Angela wiped down counters that had hosted a revolution disguised as a dinner party. The house was silent except for the soft clink of glass and the whisper of cloth against marble, a comfortable quiet that had taken months to earn. You know, Carl said, setting down a glass to dry him, I've been trying to figure out how to say something for weeks. Angela paused mid-wipe, looking up with those steady eyes that had seen through his armor from day one. You came here to cook for my boys, he continued, his voice low and honest in a way boardrooms had never heard. But you taught me how to love again. Angela's smile was soft, understanding. She folded the dish towel with the same care she brought to everything. No rush, no performance, just presence. You did that when you stayed, she said simply. Not when you hired me. Not when you defended me to the press. When you showed up at 6 o'clock with flour on your sleeves and listened to your sons talk about their day. That's when you learned. Carl nodded, throat tight. No romance label. They both understood that what they'd built was something deeper than attraction. Partnership. Found family. The kind of bond forged in fire and flour, tested by tabloids and triumph. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, hands slightly unsteady. I had my lawyers draw something up. I'm formalizing your position, head of home and family culinary arts, with equity, benefits, and security. But there's something else. Angela opened the envelope, her fingers stilling as she read. A trust, Carl explained. In your late husband Marcus's name. It'll fund culinary scholarships for at-risk youth, kids who need someone to teach them that kitchens can be sanctuaries, not just workplaces. The twins will help manage it when they're older, if you'll let them. Angela's eyes filled. She pressed a hand to her chest, over her heart, and for a moment couldn't speak. Then she did something she'd never done before. She stepped forward and hugged Carl properly, the way you hug family when words aren't big enough. Marcus would have loved this, she whispered. Thank you. The back door burst open with the force of two 9-year-olds who'd clearly been awake far too early. Happy Father's Day, Timothy and Victor shouted in unison, nearly bowling Carl over. Carl laughed, caught off guard. It's not until tomorrow. We couldn't wait. Victor thrust a handmade book into his hands, construction paper bound with kitchen twine, the cover decorated with crayon drawings of pots, spoons, and a family of stick figures under a sun labeled home. The title, written in Timothy's careful cursive, Mama Angie's Recipe Book, Love in Every Spoon. Carl opened it, his vision blurring. Each page held a recipe in the twins' handwriting, some spelled wrong, some decorated with glitter, all annotated with memories. Caramelized second chances. Dad's first try, so bad it was good. Gratitude glaze, for when words aren't enough. 3-truth chicken soup when the storm comes. The final page was signed by both boys. To Mama Angie, who taught us that family isn't who leaves, it's who stays. Love, Timothy and Victor. Angela covered her mouth, tears streaming freely now. The twins wrapped themselves around her, and Carl joined them, arms encircling all three, a knot of limbs and love and laughter that sounded like healing. An hour later, they were in the backyard herb garden, the one Angela had started planting weeks ago, claiming food tastes better when you know where it grew. Carl knelt in the dirt beside Timothy, pressing basil seedlings into soil that smelled like possibility. Victor helped Angela plant thyme, their hands side by side, brown and small, choosing roots that would grow deep and strong. Why do we plant so many? Timothy asked. Because herbs multiply, Angela explained. You plant one and it gives you dozens. That's how love works too. You share it and it keeps growing. Victor looked up at Carl. We're staying together, right? All of us? Carl met Angela's eyes over the boys' heads. She nodded. A promise made without words. All of us, Carl confirmed. Roots chosen, roots kept. Laughter drifted through the open kitchen windows, Timothy making a joke about Carl's terrible knife skills, Victor defending him, Angela humming Bob Marley while she worked. The smell of thyme and fresh earth mixed with the warmth of late morning sun, creating a sensory memory none of them would ever forget. The Clayton mansion finally sounded like home, not because of marble or money or the right address, but because of the people who'd chosen to stay when staying was the hardest, bravest thing they could do. And in the kitchen, on the windowsill, a small sign the twins had made caught the light. Chef Angie's crew, Estamoys today. Because every family has a beginning. And theirs had started with a wooden spoon, a pot of stew, and the revolutionary idea that love, real love, doesn't leave when things get messy. It just keeps stirring. If this story moved you, share the moment. Don't let it fade. Follow Motherland Stories and tap that like button to keep these voices alive. Every day we uncover strong stories, raw truths, and quiet acts of courage that shape our world. Join a circle of listeners, dreamers, and changemakers, because every story deserves to be heard. This wasn't just an episode, it was a call to remember. Silence hides injustice. Courage exposes it. At Motherland Stories, we don't turn away. We bear witness. Subscribe and stand with stories that challenge power and celebrate truth.